Today, we discover a story where a quiet life is shattered by an extraordinary secret. Samuel Washington, a humble hospital worker, loses his beloved wife Lorraine, only to find she's left behind not just memories, but a hidden fortune meant to change the world. Shock turns to courage as Samuel faces elite families, social prejudice, and the pressures surrounding his son's high-stakes wedding. In a breathtaking moment, dignity triumphs over wealth, reshaping relationships and forging an unforgettable legacy. Lorraine's fortune becomes a force for good, sparking a foundation that lifts children and unites communities. Grief gives way to hope as ordinary routines transform into lifelong impact, and one small family's love ripples through an entire city. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? Have you ever wondered if the people you see are truly living the lives they claim? Sometimes the quietest faces hold the wildest secrets. Our story begins with Rebecca, a girl admired by all who knew her. Rebecca's dazzling smile and gentle tone melted hearts, and her kindness seemed boundless. She was the textbook image of a pastor's daughter, elegant and humble at only 19. Every Sunday, she led the choir with a voice that stirred emotions deep within the congregation, and her presence at every dawn prayer meeting never went unnoticed. Such devotion, such perfection. It was as if she had been crafted solely for virtue. Yet, beneath that flawless exterior, Rebecca waged an internal war. Her soul was restless, boxed in by commandments and curfews she had never chosen for herself. As the pastor's eldest daughter, she carried a burden few could see: the relentless pressure to meet impossible standards and never betray her family's sacred reputation. The wider world called to her, a place alive with noise, rebellion, and temptation, whispering of freedoms forbidden in her sheltered life. At her university, Rebecca watched from the fringes as other girls whispered about weekends, brimming with excitement. They talked in hushed, thrilling tones about parties that stretched until sunrise, exclusive clubs where wealthy men let no wish go ungranted, and worlds awash with designer clothes and luxury makeup. These girls swayed through life with a confidence Rebecca envied, unburdened by the judgment of a parish or the expectations of faith. Rebecca merely listened, never daring to participate. But curiosity, dangerous, delicious curiosity, gnawed at her heart. What secrets did those glittering nights hold? What did freedom truly feel like? The answer arrived with a force Rebecca could not ignore: Jessica. Jessica was the living embodiment of everything Rebecca's parents warned her about. She was breathtakingly beautiful, oozing self-assurance, moving through the world as if it all belonged to her. Scented in costly perfume and draped in the latest fashions, Jessica changed her phones and handbags almost as often as her stories about the men who adored her. Rebecca found herself captivated, unable to look away. Jessica didn't hide from rules. She shattered them. She radiated the sort of energy that made people either love her or envy her, but never ignore her. It was only a matter of time before their worlds collided. One lazy afternoon, in a sun-washed cafeteria, Jessica slid into the seat beside Rebecca. Her manicured nails traced the rim of her glass, her lips curled in mischief. "You're always so quiet, church girl," she teased, her voice low and knowing. Rebecca returned a reserved smile, feeling both invisible and deeply seen. "I just keep to myself," she replied, hoping the conversation would drift elsewhere. But Jessica only leaned closer, her gaze sharp as she whispered, "But you pay attention. And you wonder." The words hung in the air, tempting like the forbidden fruit. Rebecca stiffened. Could Jessica see through her? Jessica's laughter was soft, full of secrets. "I know you wonder what it's like, living without rules, without expectations, with nobody waiting for you to slip." Rebecca wanted to deny it, to pretend she didn't care. But the words would not come. For the first time, she was speechless. Jessica seemed to sense her uncertainty and offered a sly grin. "Relax. I'm not trying to turn you into me," she joked, tapping her straw playfully against her cup. "But I'll tell you a secret. You'd be unstoppable if you ever dropped the act." The words struck nerves Rebecca didn't know she had. Without realizing it, Jessica had exposed the truth Rebecca tried so hard to bury. It started with a minor deception. One evening, instead of heading home after choir practice, as her father had insisted, Rebecca accepted Jessica's invitation to visit her apartment. Just for an hour, she rationalized, just to see. Crossing the threshold into Jessica's world was like entering a parallel universe. Gone were the framed Bible verses and nightly family prayers. Music pulsed through the apartment, shaking the air, mingling with the scent of expensive perfume, and laughter from girls sprawled luxuriously across velvet couches. They filmed TikTok dances under glowing ring lights, their joy contagious and wild. Jessica grinned and tossed Rebecca a daringly short, figure-hugging dress. Nothing like the modest clothes filling Rebecca's closet. "Try it on. No one will ever know," Jessica encouraged, her eyes sparkling. Rebecca's hands trembled as she touched the unfamiliar fabric, torn between fear and excitement. After a moment's hesitation, she slipped into the dress. In the mirror, her old self disappeared. Gone was the demure and obedient pastor's daughter. In her place stood someone bolder, more mysterious, a girl Rebecca barely recognized. For the first time, she wondered if she had been missing out on a different version of life all along. That initial taste of rebellion sent a thrill coursing through her veins. It was far too easy, she realized, to break the rules she had always obeyed. The first time she snuck out, it was almost laughable. Her parents at a church vigil, her siblings asleep, leaving the house was as simple as closing the door quietly behind her. Jessica's late-night text, "Are you ready?" pushed Rebecca further. She applied her makeup with trembling hands, copying Jessica's techniques, transforming her face and her spirit. That night, the city was alive with possibility. Rebecca slipped through neon-lit streets by Jessica's side, her nerves hidden beneath smoky eyeliner and crimson lips. The nightclub doorway glowed like a portal to another universe, and inside, the air pulsed with bass, laughter, and the shimmer of expensive cocktails. Every sense in Rebecca's body seemed to awaken. Her heart pounded, her skin tingled, her mind raced. For the first time, nobody looked at her as the pastor's daughter. They saw only the confident, dazzling woman she could become. Jessica introduced her to everyone as Becky, and just like that, her identity split in two. By night, she was fearless, mysterious, flirtatious. By day, she still wore the mask of devotion that comforted her family. As the night wore on, Rebecca let herself be swept away by the rhythm and energy all around her. She danced until her legs ached, laughed with new friends, and sipped drinks she would never have dared to try in her old life. It felt like a secret freedom, one that tasted forbidden but addictive. Under Jessica's guidance, she learned to use her beauty and wit to captivate those around her. Compliments flowed from wealthy young men and their friends, showering her with attention she'd never known. Rebecca felt powerful and desired, a sensation that made her question why she had lived in the shadows for so long. With each passing hour, her fears faded, replaced by an intoxicating sense of possibility. Still, as dawn approached, the weight of her dual life pressed down on her. Rebecca snuck home before her family returned, wiping off all traces of makeup, washing away the scent of nightclub smoke, and whispering silent prayers for forgiveness. She looked in the mirror and struggled to reconcile the girl she'd seen the night before with the one staring back at her now. The thrill refused to leave her heart, as if it had planted a seed that grew with every forbidden adventure. Yet the guilt gnawed at her. Was it possible to live two lives forever? Could a girl truly serve God by day and become a slay queen by night? As weeks turned into months, Rebecca grew bolder, inventing excuses to spend more time with Jessica's circle. Her grades held up, her church involvement never wavered, so no one suspected the changes bubbling beneath her surface. With every outing, she crafted a persona, confident, dazzling, unafraid. But at Sunday service, kneeling beside her father as he preached about holy living, doubts began to creep in. The words about temptation and the dangers of losing oneself sounded different now, as if aimed directly at her. Rebecca struggled to focus, the memories of late nights and laughter flickering through her mind like forbidden fire. But Rebecca couldn't stop. There was something about those nights, the excitement, the danger, the admiration. Even the risk of getting caught stoked the flames inside her. The two worlds she existed in fed different parts of her soul. In church, she felt needed, respected, even loved, but sometimes suffocated. With Jessica and the girls, she felt wild, beautiful, limitless. The battle within her grew fiercer each day, but the thrill always pulled her back. Then, one night, a new invitation arrived, one bolder and more dangerous than ever before, threatening to expose everything Rebecca fought so hard to keep secret. Jessica burst into Rebecca's apartment late one evening, her eyes sparkling with excitement and a touch of mischief. "There's a private party at the rooftop penthouse tonight," she announced. "Everyone who's anyone will be there. It's invitation only." The invitation felt like a golden ticket to a world Rebecca had only glimpsed from afar. Lessons bloom. Part of her wanted to refuse, to remind herself of her responsibilities at home and the image she was meant to project. But curiosity had mastered her will, and her hunger for the unknown was impossible to ignore. Jessica dressed her in a gown that shimmered with every movement, transforming Rebecca into a vision she barely recognized. "You look stunning," Jessica whispered with approval, giving her a reassuring squeeze. Rebecca's nerves faded in the face of Jessica's certainty. By the time they arrived, city lights sparkled beneath them like distant stars, and laughter rose up from the streets. Security checked their names at the door, then welcomed them in. Just like that, they were swept into a realm where everything felt larger than life. Inside the penthouse, the world glittered. Chandeliers cast golden light over crowds of elegantly dressed guests. Socialites, celebrities, influential men who moved with arrogance and poise. Waiters circled with trays of champagne and delicacies Rebecca couldn't even name. Jessica navigated the crowds with graceful ease, introducing Rebecca to the city's elite. Each new encounter tested Rebecca's composure, but adrenaline and excitement gave her courage she never knew she possessed. She made bold conversation, let herself laugh, and began to see how easily she could melt into this world. It wasn't just the glamour that enchanted her. It was the feeling that anything was possible. Here, no one cared about her upbringing or reputation. They saw her only for who she presented herself to be. A wealthy businessman, charmed by her beauty and wit, offered to take her on a spontaneous shopping spree. Jessica winked at Rebecca, signaling her approval. A night spun by in a haze of designer labels and flirty whispers. But amidst the luxury and excitement, Rebecca's conscience tugged gently at her. She couldn't forget the lessons her father had instilled or the verses her mother whispered before bed. Sometimes, at the edge of the party, she caught her own reflection and saw the conflict flickering behind her confident smile. Was she truly happy, or simply running from the version of herself she'd been taught to cherish? When the music faded and the lights dimmed, she lay awake in Jessica's spare room, haunted by uncertainty. Dawn would always come too soon. The sun painted the city in golden hues as Rebecca quietly dressed in her old, modest clothes, gathering her belongings to sneak back before anyone at home noticed her absence. Each return felt more difficult, a little heavier, a little more complicated to explain. She rehearsed stories in her mind, so careful with her words, desperate to protect her family from the double life she now led. Despite these struggles, Rebecca could not deny how alive she felt in the electric nights. Jessica became not just a guide, but a true friend. She shared her own scars, losses, heartbreaks, desperate choices made in a world that offered freedom but demanded a price. For the first time, Rebecca realized everyone wore masks. Everyone carried burdens. Behind Jessica's bravado was someone longing for acceptance, someone who also grappled with loneliness. The girls bonded over secrets and dreams whispered into the dark, finding comfort in one another's company. As their friendship deepened, Rebecca opened up about her strict upbringing, her father's sermons, and the immense pressure to be perfect. Jessica listened closely, her support unwavering. "You don't have to choose one life," she told Rebecca softly. "You can be both, strong and vulnerable." Yet, even as Rebecca grew bolder, the walls of her two worlds crept ever closer. Her younger sister began to notice the changes, how Rebecca's eyes glimmered with secrets, or how she seemed distracted during family prayers. At church, her mother pulled her aside, voice trembling. "Is everything all right, Rebecca? You've seemed distant." The question stung, and guilt pooled in Rebecca's stomach. For a brief moment, she considered confessing everything, surrendering her carefully constructed double life. But fear held her back. Jessica sensed her anxiety. One night, as they watched city lights ripple across the river, she reminded Rebecca, "No one's perfect, not even the ones who pretend to be." Rebecca clung to those words, desperate for reassurance. She wasn't ready to let go of either world yet, not the love and safety of her family, and not the thrilling freedom she'd discovered on those wild nights. As the weeks passed, the tension inside Rebecca grew harder to ignore. Her university friends started to invite her out more often, sensing her willingness to enjoy the city's dazzling nightlife. Even Jessica's elite circle seemed to have a place ready for her. A seat at the table, a wink from across the room, a confidence boost whenever she needed it. But this acceptance came with new challenges, rumors, jealousy, and more eyes watching every move. Some nights, Rebecca barely recognized her own laughter, wondering when her true self had last spoken. The balancing act became exhausting. Rebecca's phone buzzed constantly, messages from home reminding her about church events, invitations from Jessica promising excitement. She became an expert at lying without guilt. "I'm at a study group," she would text her mom, while slipping into a shimmering cocktail dress for another forbidden adventure. Under her bed, she hid shoes and makeup she didn't dare let her family discover. Each lie built on the last, a shaky tower of secrets that threatened to come crashing down. One evening, the stakes rose unimaginably higher. Jessica called Rebecca in a panic, her voice quivering. "You have to help me." One of the girls got into trouble. Someone found out about her double life, and now she's being blackmailed. The air seemed to freeze around Rebecca. Her thoughts spiraled wildly. Was this her future too? Could she really keep juggling identities without consequences? Fear gripped her as she realized how quickly things could unravel. They spent that night together, huddled in Jessica's apartment, weighing options and desperate for solutions. The hours crawled by as they comforted their friend and searched for answers. In those moments of crisis, Rebecca's loyalty was tested. She found herself praying silently, not for forgiveness, but for strength. The night was long and uncertain, a stark reminder that every secret came with a price. Rebecca wondered if she could continue without sacrificing the people she loved most. Afterward, the whole group grew more cautious. Nights out were planned with stricter discretion. Social media posts became blurred and anonymous. Yet fear did little to dull the need for escape. In fact, the risk only heightened the thrill for Rebecca. She became addicted to the adrenaline, the rush of sneaking home before dawn, the excitement of nearly getting caught. Each success made her feel unstoppable, as if she was leading a double life no one could ever expose. However, the aftermath of the scandal lingered. The girl who'd been blackmailed withdrew from their circle, leaving Rebecca and Jessica shaken. Rebecca started to notice how fragile their world was, how easily freedom could turn into a trap. The golden nights grew a shade darker, and even Jessica's laughter seemed less sure. Rebecca often stared at the city lights, unsure whether she was running toward happiness or away from it. Tumult brewed at home, too. Rebecca's father announced he'd been asked to lead the church's annual revival meetings, a major honor that would place his family at the center of the congregation's attention. Expectations soared. "Rebecca, I want you to help organize the youth meetings," her father said, pride shining in his eyes. "You're a model for the others." The words stung more than ever. She was torn, longing to be the daughter her parents adored, yet haunted by the taste of the world she'd discovered. Rebecca doubled her efforts at home and church, hoping to prove herself, but it was like walking a tightrope. Her every move felt scrutinized. Her makeup, her phone calls, even her laughter. Even as she stood before the choir, her heart beat wildly with the fear that someone would recognize her from the city's parties, that a fragment of her secret life might slip through and shatter everything she'd built. Jessica understood. She saw Rebecca's struggles and offered comforting words when the burden became too heavy. "It's okay to be different," Jessica would whisper during their late-night chats. "Just don't lose yourself." But the line between Rebecca's two worlds was wearing thin. She became restless, her dreams often filled with anxiety and guilt. On one hand, she yearned to be seen, to be known, to chase freedom and pleasure. On the other, she longed for acceptance and security. Rebecca's diary turned into her confessional, pages stained with fear and hope. She poured out feelings she could reveal to no one, her desire to break free, her terror of losing everything. Each entry ended with a question, never an answer. Could she ever bring her two lives together? Or would one inevitably destroy the other? Pressure at home began to mount as the date for the revival meetings approached. Rebecca's father grew more watchful, gently but firmly checking in on her whereabouts and reminding her of her duty to set an example for the youth group. Her mother fussed over her, offering advice about prayer, modesty, and staying away from dangerous influences. Every word felt like a test, and Rebecca played her part, nodding and smiling, all the while hiding the exhaustion that came from living a lie. Her double life began to take its toll. Rebecca struggled to focus in class, her mind racing with worries about keeping her secrets safe. Her phone was a constant source of anxiety, a portal to both worlds, each demanding more of her attention. Sometimes, Rebecca would close her eyes and imagine slipping away completely, leaving behind expectations and reputation to follow only her true desires. but she knew she couldn't do it. She was still bound by loyalty, fear, and love. Meanwhile, Jessica sensed Rebecca's growing distress. On a quiet evening, beneath a sky heavy with rain, Jessica made tea and wrapped Rebecca in a blanket. "Listen," she said softly. "You don't have to keep up the act forever. Maybe it's time to choose for real." Rebecca shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "I don't even know which life is mine, Jess." "I don't want to hurt anyone." Jessica sighed, pulling her closer. "Secrets always demand sacrifice, but you deserve happiness too. Think about what you want, not just what they expect from you." The words echoed inside Rebecca's mind long after she left. For the first time, she realized her pain was more than just guilt. It was grief for the person she might never become. The revival meetings arrived with a roar of energy and attention. The church overflowed with new faces, and Rebecca's family was in the spotlight. Rebecca led the choir, organized youth activities, and greeted visitors, all while feeling that familiar ache in her chest. Each sermon about honesty and faith seemed to pierce her facade. Late at night, she would listen to her father, pray for his children's safety and future, his voice raw with hope. During one youth gathering, an outspoken girl asked Rebecca how she managed to always be so perfect. The question punched straight through her defenses. Rebecca swallowed hard, forcing a smile and giving a gentle answer about faith and discipline. But inside, her heart screamed. Would her peers still respect her if they knew the truth? Did she even respect herself? At the same time, Rebecca became obsessed with social media, scrolling through the glamorous lives of other slay queens, envying both their confidence and their freedom. She posted cautiously, never tagging herself at parties or showing more than a hint of rebellion. But the temptation to reveal her new self to the world grew stronger each day. Jessica urged her to be bolder, but Rebecca hesitated, knowing how quickly things could spiral out of control. The city nightlife tugged at her constantly. One evening, a crucial night for the church revival, Rebecca found herself sneaking away instead, lured by Jessica's urgent text about a celebrity party. As she stood in front of the mirror, preparing to paint her lips red and slip into another dazzling outfit, guilt crashed down on her shoulders, heavier than ever. This was not just a small act of rebellion. It was a direct betrayal. That night ended with Rebecca feeling emptier than ever. The party was loud and glittering, and she smiled for the cameras, but inside was only chaos. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from her worried family. She watched Jessica dance and laugh, envying her ability to shut the world out. Rebecca tried to join in, but every drink tasted bitter, every compliment hollow. When she finally returned home, sneaking in while her mother prayed in the living room, Rebecca could no longer hold back her tears. She curled up on her bed, letting herself cry for the first time in months. The thrill was gone, replaced by grief and confusion. She no longer knew who she wanted to be whether she could ever be both the beloved daughter and the bold slay queen, or if her pursuit of freedom would cost her every good thing she'd ever known. The days after the party dragged like storm clouds across Rebecca's soul. She went through the motions, church meetings, school assignments, family dinners, all with a hollow smile and aching heart. Her mother noticed her silence and pressed gently, "Rebecca, you know you can tell me anything, right?" It was almost too much. Rebecca nodded, swallowing the urge to spill every secret she'd held for so long. Instead, she hid in her room, clutching her diary, scribbling desperate words until her hand cramped. The heaviness began to change Rebecca. She started missing classes and slipping away from her best friend at church. Even Jessica could see something was wrong. "Becky, you're not yourself," she whispered one night, her eyes searching Rebecca's face for the girl who once danced so fearlessly. Rebecca forced a laugh, but it came out empty. She wondered if she would ever feel joy again, or if pretending was all she had left. But life refused to pause for Rebecca. At the height of the revival meetings, her father received an anonymous message, questions about his daughter's late-night escapades, hints about photos circulating online. He called Rebecca into his study, the air thick with dread. "Is there something you need to tell me?" he asked softly. Rebecca's heart thudded dangerously as she mumbled half-truths and promised she'd been only with friends. Her father sighed, his eyes both gentle and worried. "I love you, Rebecca. I just want you safe." Afterward, Rebecca hid beneath her blankets, as the world outside seemed to close in. She felt exposed and panicked, knowing her secret life was starting to unravel. The terrible fear of losing everything she loved squeezed her chest, making it hard to breathe. For the first time, she considered running away, to escape judgment, disappointment, and consequences. But where would she go, and who would she become? Jessica was determined not to let Rebecca disappear. She arrived unannounced, bringing hot chocolate and her fierce loyalty. "Don't shut me out," she pleaded. "You need to let someone in." Rebecca confided in her, trembling as she admitted how overwhelmed and afraid she was. Jessica listened, tears in her own eyes. "We can face this together, okay? No one has to be perfect. Just promise me you won't get lost." Something shifted in Rebecca that night. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. Jessica's faith in her was a lifeline, reminding her of friendship's power even when everything else felt broken. Lessons bloom. Rebecca resolved to start slowly repairing her life, even if she had no plan, only the hope that she could find herself again. The next morning, Rebecca made a small, brave choice. She skipped a party invitation and instead went for a walk in the park. Sunlight filtered through the trees, and as she sat with her journal, she began to write a letter to her parents, full of honesty, fear, love, and regret. Each word was a step toward freedom. She wasn't sure she could give the letter to them, but even writing it felt like healing. Tears dripped onto the page as Rebecca began to imagine a world where she didn't have to hide. Later, she met with her younger sister, taking her for ice cream and sharing quiet stories. Rebecca saw she'd been missing out on the little joys her family offered, the simple love that came without judgment or performance. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of peace. Rebecca's double life didn't unravel overnight. She still had secrets, fears, and fleeting moments when she wanted to escape. But now she allowed herself to move slowly, to pause, to consider who she truly wanted to be. Not just for her family, and not only for herself. She asked Jessica for space and began turning up more often at home, reconnecting with her faith and rediscovering old dreams. She made mistakes, cried herself to sleep, and stumbled through awkward confessions. But every step was hers alone. The world she tasted was still there, dazzling, risky, seductive. Sometimes she missed it, but Rebecca realized she didn't have to be only one thing or live by anyone else's rules. She could choose her own path, built on honesty, courage, and self-love. It was the beginning of something new, a journey toward wholeness, where faith and freedom could exist side by side, for as long as she was willing to keep searching. Rebecca spent the following days in quiet contemplation, allowing herself to rest and heal. She avoided parties and muted the group chats that once consumed her nights. She took solitary walks, prayed with her family, and let herself breathe without expectation or performance. At first, the silence unnerved her. The absence of excitement left space for self-doubt. Gradually, she discovered comfort, enjoying the peace that had once felt so stifling. Her younger sister watched her carefully, sensing Rebecca's inner struggle. One evening, as they folded laundry together, her sister whispered, "I missed you." Rebecca smiled gently, heart aching with tenderness and guilt. She promised to always be present, no matter where life took her. That night, Rebecca prayed with her family for the first time since the crisis, finding solace in her father's words and her mother's steady embrace. Jessica reached out less frequently, respecting Rebecca's need for distance. Their friendship shifted, but endured, rooted now in truth and vulnerability. Jessica had begun her own journey, grappling with what freedom meant to her. Occasionally, the two met at a quiet cafe, talking about everything and nothing. Rebecca was grateful for the space and for the knowledge that real friendship could survive change. There were temptations still. Invitations arrived, and classmates gossiped about wild nights. Sometimes, Rebecca felt the familiar tug to return, to prove she was still bold and adventurous. But she no longer craved escape the way she once did. Instead, she volunteered at her church's outreach, using her experience to counsel younger girls struggling with identity and pressure. Her mistakes became a source of wisdom and empathy, helping her forgive herself a little more each day. Gradually, Rebecca started living more openly. She posted to social media with honesty, sharing photos of her church activities, time spent with family, and smiles that reached her eyes. She wrote long captions about loyalty, forgiveness, and growing up, inviting others to see not just her glamour, but her heart. The reactions surprised her. Old friends reached out to thank her, and even some from her wild nights messaged encouragement. Her parents noticed the change, too. One Sunday after church, her father touched her cheek with pride. "I see your strength, Rebecca. I know it's not always easy, but I trust you." Rebecca fought tears, overwhelmed by the depth of love she'd nearly lost sight of in her search for freedom. She didn't shun excitement or adventure. Instead, she chose carefully whom to trust and how much of herself to give. Jessica remained in her life a beacon of support and understanding. Rebecca moved forward with new boundaries, learning to say no, choosing outings that aligned with her values, and refusing to compromise her well-being for fleeting pleasures. She poured herself into university, passionate about psychology and counseling. She dreamed of working with girls like herself, caught between expectation and autonomy. Each lecture, each service project, each moment listening to someone else's story reminded her of how far she'd come. The lessons she learned became the foundation for her future. Rebecca's journey was neither flawless nor linear. Dark nights returned, doubt still lingered, and the lure of her old life sometimes resurfaced. But she was no longer running from herself. Instead, she met every feeling head-on, willing to struggle and grow. With her family's love and Jessica's friendship, Rebecca forged a new identity, one woven from faith, honesty, courage, and compassion. On her graduation day, she stood in the glow of celebration, surrounded by those who mattered most. Lessons bloom. Rebecca understood now that living a double life was only ever a symptom of deeper pain, a longing for love, approval, and freedom. She chose wholeness over perfection, grateful for every step of her journey. The city lights would always beckon, but her true home was within herself, a place where she could finally rest.